Hi everybody, it's Annette from the Art of Intuition, and today we're going to talk about when to re-enter a reality and when to stay away from the reality and the signs that you are either ready to go back in or not ready to go back in. So what you're going to find as we go through our ascension process, that the farther you get from the human realities, the more things start to shift and change, and a lot of stuff you've had for a while starts to go away. People go away, situations go away, and things really changed quickly. The higher you go, the higher you go in consciousness, the higher you go in anchoring in that consciousness. What used to maybe take you I'm going to use human time here, a linear time here, because that's kind of where we can kind of set up different markers. What might have taken you maybe 2 years to shift out of, you might be doing it in like 4 or 5 months, or stuff that's been around for a long, long time and been a big part of your life. It's not all of a sudden, not there anymore, or it's got to go. And it can cause a lot of resistance in our body because our human's never going to like these shifts. We're so used to things being a certain way, no matter how conscious you are. It's going to take a lot of these processes, a lot of these different iterations of things having to shift and change to feel more comfortable with things shifting and changing. That's just kind of how it works. After a while you get to the point where it's like, okay, that's got to go too, fine, whatever. You just get to, sometimes you don't have the energy for, what's got to go next, or you don't have the resistance anymore to kind of fight what's got to go next. Because sometimes it doesn't have to go forever. Sometimes it's just, you have to detach from you have to get rid of the cords of attachment to it, and then it can come back in. So what you're going to find is, if you start having things that used to be aligned with people, situations aren't aligned anymore. They're not coming from their highest aspect. They might be coming from their human aspect. You're coming from your higher aspect. And it can just feel like it doesn't feel right anymore. You can feel like you're maybe just not as happy in relationships anymore. So those realities will start to close out. And then you have to kind of decide, when do I go back into them? Or do I go back into them? Is there a time when I re-enter a reality, or do I not? And what I have found, especially if you've had an argument, or even if it wasn't an argument, something that was upsetting to you, and even if the other person might not know you were upset, and might not know they triggered a lot of these emotions in you, I never enter back into anything until I have no emotion around it anymore. And that can be frustrating for the other person, because they might want to interact with you quicker. But don't enter back into a reality until you have time to clear the emotions around it and your body has time to attune to a new frequency. That is a critical thing, because if you don't give your body that time and you re-enter into a reality too quickly, because your human is giving you all the stories as to why you have to go into it quickly. If it's a friendship, a romantic relationship, whatever you've had for a long time, even at some type of business relationship, it really doesn't matter. In the higher realms, there are relationships. No one is more important than the other. But your human might be giving you, oh, you got to go talk to them right away, or you might lose the whole reality, or blah, 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 blah. Don't listen to your human. Don't listen to any urgency to do it. Because your soul does not push you into doing anything unless you've had to do something for a while and you haven't done it. That's like the one exception to that rule. Sometimes we know we're supposed to do something and we wait too long, and kind of the window closes, and then we're kind of in sort of an energetic push to go do something. But when it comes to these types of things, and you've been upset and you've gotten a lot of emotions have been triggered, we always need to kind of deal with ourselves first. Let's deal with ourselves first. Get to where you've resolved all the emotion about how you feel, and then you can then go on to the reality again. You can then go on to the next phase of the reality and re-enter into it. But until you're in that place, if you re-enter into it before your body has had time to clear the emotion, resolve everything, get back to a very peaceful feeling inside, your body has time to attune to that higher frequency. If you enter back into the reality with that person, you're going to recreate the whole thing all over again, because you're not allowing yourself the time to recalibrate. And that's basically what your body's trying to do. That's why a lot of times after this, You're going to be super tired when you've had that. You think, oh, it's just because I've had so much of an emotional reaction to this situation or this person. Your body is so tired because it is time to attune to that other frequency. That whole situation took place so you could get all this stuff out and attune to a higher frequency. That's why it happened. That and a zillion other reasons. That's one of the main reasons it happened, because your body's trying to get rid of all that stuff. That's not that higher frequency. So this thing happened to trigger it. Sometimes that's the only thing that would have triggered it. I know for myself, if I've been trying to cry because I feel like I need to get stuff out and I can't get there, and then something happens and then it's like, okay, there it is. And then I can just cry for like almost like a solid hour because I finally had that thing that got to me that triggered all that sadness to come up. But unless you had time to really attune and give yourself the space to do it, no matter how much the other person is trying to re-enter back into reality with you, it's very critical that you give yourself the time. If not, you're just going to re-enter into the old timeline again because you are not calibrating to a new frequency. Now, just because you calibrate to a new frequency, you might not be able to keep the reality the way you would like to keep it, the way your human might want to keep it, or even the way your higher self might see the reality, but that's not the reality you have in front of you. And I know that happens to me quite a bit, where I'll see a reality in my dream state that is a higher line reality, but the one I get is not that one. And sometimes that's because we're not in the frequency to get that one yet. So you can't kind of settle for the old ones. You can't settle for ones that don't feel aligned. You have to understand and know that you will get more aligned realities. It might not be with that person. It might be with that person. Sometimes it is with that person. Sometimes it's not. I've had some people that have stuck around for a long, long period of time, and some people that stuck around for very short periods of time. You know, usually the people you think are going to be around aren't, and the people you never thought would be around will be, because you look at it when you start these processes from a human perspective. You're still in so much of your human DNA and your human programming that you're looking at your human relationships, and you don't yet understand. We don't understand yet that there are soul relationships. There are people that are come in to feel soul agreements with you. So they have soul relationships with you. And technically all your human are soul relationships, but you're just going to understand the difference. Like, just because you had a human relationship with the person when you were in your human programming does not mean it's going to carry over to a higher aligned reality, because sometimes you're just too different. They're coming from their human aspect and you're coming from your higher aspect, and it's repeated and repeated and repeated over years and years and years of maybe being in a relationship with this person. There comes a time when you kind of have to kind of weigh it out and decide, is there any more reason for me to be here? Can I really contribute more to this, or is it now just gonna be affecting my vibration if I try to keep going on when I'm not seeing that much shifting, or not as quickly as you're shifting? If you're shifting a lot quicker than someone else, and then when you're in higher consciousness realities, vibrational realities, you start shifting a lot quicker. You know, it's a lot faster. It moves a lot faster. You shift a lot faster. And if they're shifting in a human pace, which is, to me, very smaller, ticks up the frequency scale, they're still shifting, but in a much smaller increments than you are. There's going to come a time when, if that person's not willing to kind of take that jump, that there might be time apart, and there might be long times apart, because you're just not in the same, you're not in the same bandwidth, really. And it's just going to be miserable to try to continue to act, because the higher you go in frequency and the higher you go in consciousness, the more frustrating it'll be to have to deal with people in a human consciousness constantly. It just gets to a point where, even though sometimes they do show you their higher aspects, it's just not their set point. It's not their go-to, especially when, you know, things go, I don't want to say badly, but you know, when things get harder, you know, when that situation comes up, which way are they going to go? When they're backed against a wall, are they going human, or are they going to go be able to hold onto their higher aspect? And that's really becomes kind of the litmus test for a lot of us when we start looking at what do we do with different people, kind of hate to say like pawns on a chessboard. That's kind of how it feels. Start moving people around and kind of deciding like, okay, is this going to be able to work? Is this going to be able to stay? This person's always going to go human. Is it any reason for me to still be here? Now, technically, you were there for a reason. You're supposed to show them higher consciousness. You're supposed to be the most conscious person in their reality. There's a reason you're there. And you have to decide after a while is it still a reason for me to be here? Am I still giving this person, am I a crutch for this person now, or am I really showing them something? And that's going to be maybe different on a daily basis. Maybe sometimes you pull out of a reality for a while to really get clear on it. And that's when it goes back into not re-entering a reality too fast. Because if you enter it too fast, you're still pissed off, you're still mad. If it was that type of, that type of situation, or even if you're just in any way not at peace with the relationship. I remember an old human phrase. I don't know why it comes to me now, but it does. Don't sit down to the negotiating table unless you're willing to walk away. And I do think there is kind of a correlation to a higher realms. Unless you are willing to walk away from the reality, if it cannot align and it's highest, do not sit down to talk to anybody, because you're not ready yet. And take as long as it takes for you, take that time. If it's 6 months, if it's 6 minutes, if it's 6 weeks, it doesn't matter. You're gonna know when you're at peace with it, and you can sit down and really look at it and see, okay, in my current frequency, is this gonna work? Or is it just something that we're just too far apart now? So take your time. Now, I don't like to use the word time, but we're gonna take our time. This is the one thing when you really have to just really be in tune with yourself to see, could I walk away from this reality in this moment and know that, okay, I did the best I could. I'm going to close it out at the highest place, but I'm willing to walk away from it. Because if you're not willing to walk away from it, then you still got something going on with it. Something is going on inside. So take the time to recognize what that is and keep practicing the art of intuition.